basketball had one commissioner, and this guy, this gentleman, this amazing, inflexible in a lot of ways, visionary, put the pieces together to a damaged and destroyed product in a way that I don't know that anybody else could have.
Yeah, I mean,
this guy's a legend.
You couldn't be overly friendly. You had to be tough. Because it was the 70s, and they're coming out of the 70s, I should say, and drugs were such a big part of the culture of athletes at that time. And he didn't want this game that was becoming a family affair to be influenced by that. So he came down hard. I mean, he was banning players who had multiple drug offenses, and then obviously the positive things that he brought was the expansion into the international markets. That's what most people will talk about, because a quarter now of the NBA players are foreign and foreign-born, and some of the stars. I mean, Giannis was from Greece, and he was the MVP. Doncic is headed towards being an MVP at some point. And just every team has an international feel to it, and so the money, the explosion of I mean, these guys are billionaires now, are heading towards multi-hundred millionaires. These guys, the owners, obviously have raked in a ton of money. Those are the billionaires, and it's all because of his vision and his foresight. And you can't deny his greatness. Yeah, there were some things that were not always ideal, like the dress code and some other things. But in some ways, and this is what I said yesterday, it prompted athletes to get inventive with their attire.
Now, a little more business savvy,
but with their own flair.
Sure.
Think about what Russell Westbrook wears. And hard. And I'm not saying I like any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're trying to be trendy, and obviously that dress code thing went away pretty quickly. But it forced athletes to think about their brands. And now basketball players are at the forefront of branding themselves. And so it's been a boon for everyone associated with the league in so many different ways.
Well, you know what he did too, Tiki? He embraced something that was foreign to sports, and that was really the illumination of self. I don't want to say over team, but there was an interesting juxtaposition between the two dynamics there.
That's interesting.
And think about that.
Because you never saw that, ever.
No, it was counterintuitive to what we were taught.
X team versus Y team. Yep. This rivalry versus this rivalry. It was never about the individuals, but he saw the power of the individual, and it was much more exciting to hear Magic versus Bird rather than Lakers versus Celtics. I mean, that was still big, but still, Magic versus Bird and this rivalry that went back into college. It was powerful, man. You wanted to see it. It kind of it played races against each other, and it played coasts against each other, and played colors against each other. Sure. It was pretty amazing.
Listen, I think he's on the Mount Rushmore for the NBA. I really do. Now, you try to assign levels of greatness or achievement or a little bit of both here. I don't think, the NBA, if I'm carving out a piece of granite, I'm going to put Magic, no order. I'm going to put Magic, I'm going to put Bird, I'm going to put Michael Jordan, and I'm going to put David Stern. And the reason I'm going to do that is, and again, there's others that I clearly gloss over, like, well, how do you not put Bill Russell there? Well, you got to remember, Bill Russell was already coronated this incredible champion, but the NBA was dying even 20 years after his incredible accomplishments. That's not a knock on Bill Russell. That's just to show you that when David Stern, right before he took over, I know you probably hit a few of these things yesterday, he just mentioned the drug culture. And it wasn't just weed, which many of us are okay with. I mean, it was cocaine. Yeah. It was hard drugs. You go and just do a little Google search, Getty Images, and look at some of the swaths of empty seats around, not just, some of the obscure arenas in the NBA. Madison Square Garden, for a team that's been asleep for 20 years, the Garden, back during that time when they were they would have 9,000 people there. And half were bookies, honestly, taking bets. And you don't want to always attach race to this, but you have to understand, for the young fans out there, the drugs were one aspect. The empty venues were another one. The lack of forget about digital, but a television imprint was so palpable. I know you probably mentioned this yesterday, but the NBA was on tape delay. And David Stern had probably, without being a prisoner of the moment, Because baseball's always served the white fan. Think about that. Hockey's always served the white fan. Football has always served the white fan. David Stern's challenge, aside from international growth and the things that you detailed, and you're right, was getting white consumers to say, I want to watch this, and I want to support this, because people need to know that, and I want to make sure I say this right. I almost didn't even feel comfortable doing a Google search on this, honestly. In 1978, 1979, there was an article written, and the New York Knicks were, instead of being called the New York Knickerbockers, they in print, they were called the New York N-word Bockers. Now think about all the stuff to convince white fans who generally fueled it certainly early in terms of going to now support a sport that was riddled with cocaine and 85 to 90% black and no connection to the product. That, I think, was the toughest job any commissioner's ever had.
That's why he's largely viewed as the greatest commissioner ever.
Who's better?
There's so many different things.
Maybe Uberoff? You want to make that comparison? Maybe.
Yeah, but we don't think back that far. You know what I mean?
What about Tagliabue? Tags is up there. He's got to be up there.
Tags is up there because and again, in my mind, it stems to the money side of it. He helped the NFL explode, also ridding a little bit of the drug culture, not necessarily the performance-enhancing drug culture, but the hard drugs that you were talking about, the cocaine and the substance of abuse. They weren't tested for
heroin in the 70s.
I remember when I was in high school when Lyle Alzado died. Yeah. And it was, what did he die of? He was a young man. And it was because of all the drugs that he was taking over, the steroids that he was taking over the course of his life. And I remember as a kid thinking, man, I love the NFL, but I mean, I don't want to go be a part of something is so rampant. And Paul Tagliabue helped eradicate that, at least try to eradicate it from the National Football League. And then obviously as a result, the league felt fairer, it grew, and now it's a $15 billion industry.
This man's going to be so missed. You try to do it justice, and you try to be eloquent, and you try to be aware of all the accomplishments. You can't possibly achieve that within 12 minutes of a radio show. You can't, but he was special. He was special. And he was special during a time where you could be original and you could be terse with certain things, and you could be fairly inflexible with others. And you know what? A lot of that was born out of necessity. There's never going to be another David Stern who hails from Brooklyn, who comes in with a legal background. And, just think about the paradigm here. Listen to the players and all the criticisms and the disconnect between the NFL world with Roger Goodell. And now compare that and read the outpouring of love, sincere emotion from Magic, from Bird, from Kobe, from Isaiah, from Bill Russell, from everybody. For this man.
Yeah.
He's the best.
Yeah. And a lot of us because he made all of them rich in so many different ways.
Listen, it's definitely a little part of it. Of course.
They're living these comfortable lives. I mean, what was the stat that I read? The average salary was $330,000.
In what year was this?
When he took over.
In 84. In
1884.
Okay.
And by the time he left, it was $7.7 million. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, no, I think
had to be more than that.
Now. So that's now. But maybe it was back then when he left. But the salary explosion has just been out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, the seventh man's making $15 million.
And think about this, too. Think about how the we had a few conversations like the Rays when and by the way, I heard an interview the other day that it's not fully shot down, that they might seriously entertain this going to Canada for the summer, and so whatever. But
dude, I thought that died.
I thought it did too until I heard the interview with the Rays president 2 weeks ago on MLB Network. I swear it was, and he was very serious about it. I'm like, wait a second, Tiki and I said that this was dead. When is this being revisited? Why? When was this revisited? Point being, teams like the Rays, teams like the A's, perennially 20 years looking for stadiums. Name one NBA team whose arena situation is untenable, where it's hemorrhaging money, it's at an undesirable location that hasn't been built up yet. Now, granted, It's a little easier to get 17 or 18,000 bodies. Yeah. I get that. Maybe twice a week, or even you're going to have road trips, clearly, versus 81 home games, and it's sometimes 6 or 7 nights in a row.
Yeah.
I get that. It's unique and it's different. But what NBA event? The Kings got theirs. The Pistons got theirs downtown. Little Caesars Arena. The Nets got theirs in Brooklyn. The Garden's the best. The Celtics have a sweet setup. Toronto's incredible. Staples Center. I mean, really, what's a bad arena? Utah
many.
Jazz is great. Really.
I think that's what basketball.
Dallas is sweet.
That's what makes basketball so great to watch.
OKC is awesome.
Yeah, and
every one of them.
They're playing great this year.
They're playing pretty well
relative to the last 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, they are.
It's been pretty amazing to see them come out of what we thought was going to be a horrible season. But you're right, and I think it's a little bit easier because it's the intimacy of basketball, and so you feel, no matter where you're sitting, you feel like you're close to the court.
But it was intimate in the 70s as well when nobody was going.
Good point.
So it's not like that's unique to Stern where he was given this advantage. He's like, well, it went from let's say almost like this cold, distant viewing relationship to, wow, suddenly it's very intimate. There were always 18,000-seat venues. People just didn't go.
That's right.
He really pieced it together. They want to get some calls on this. I'm sure the calls were really interesting yesterday. And listen, that's not to say that everything that David Stern did was a grand slam home run. Not everything. But boy, in terms of being married to a vision and thinking in a way before the digital age exploded, he was, for an older mind, he was so often ahead of the curve. And that's hard to be because you grow up. He was born in the 40s. You grow up in you're reading the paper every day. And you may as well be reading Moses' tablets. Forget about the tablet that we all, you know what I mean? Hey, man, I'm going to really miss David Stern. I really am.